Hi team. Australia's biggest motor race takes place this weekend, the Bathurst 1000. 6 hours worth of racing, 161 laps. Takes 1,000 kilometres for 2 drivers per car to make it through to the end, if everything goes their way. It's a prized trophy for any racing driver around the world to put on their shelf. The 2018 race stands out to me. A driver by the name of David Reynolds was showing great form during practice and during qualifying for the race. In fact, he ended up taking pole position and come race day was dominating the race until a lap 135. And that's where David's race started to fall apart, because he started to fall apart. Now, as a viewer of this event on TV, we get the advantage of hearing the commentators talking. We get the advantage of seeing multiple camera views, including camera views inside the car showing the driver at work. We also get the privilege of hearing the radio conversation between the driver and their pit crew back in the garage. And on a lap 135, David reported into his pit crew and said, "I've got the biggest cramp I've ever experienced in my whole life going on right now." Now, the pit crew just said, "Okay, shake it out, take it easy, and keep going." But rapidly, David was deteriorating in the car. He reported that his other leg had gone numb and that he couldn't feel it. He didn't know whether his foot was on the accelerator or the brake or the clutch or not. Now, when you're driving at up to 300 kilometres an hour, that's an extremely dangerous predicament to be in. Not only can you crash the car, but you can injure yourself, maybe even kill yourself or somebody else on the racetrack. He also reported that his vision was going blurry. And from the in-car footage, we could see that David was fading. He was slumping in his seat, barely looking, clearly in distress. The team asked him some questions. He couldn't answer them, which is really unusual for a technically minded driver. He didn't know whether he wanted to keep racing or not. I know, right? Crazy. His pit crew kept telling him to keep going. To cut a long story short, David eventually pulled into the pits and fell out of the car. He was completely kaput. These guys remember it too. You know, they tried to interview him straight after he got out of the car and he couldn't talk. His mind was mashed potatoes. I think David got away with his life that day. And when they interviewed the leaders in the pit crew as to why they didn't pull David in from racing earlier than what he had come in, they said that all of the data that they had, live telemetry, wasn't indicating that there was any problem, that his lap times were consistent and that all of the other measures that they monitor were within range. And yet clearly the other data that was staring all of Australia and everybody else who was watching the race around the world was clearly indicating that here was a person, a sports person, failing in their health. Their mind was going and their body was shutting down. And they were about to have one of the biggest crashes they might experience in their whole life. But the data that they were looking at didn't support that. What's your relationship with data? How does your organisation use data? You know, I've been in conversations debriefing employee engagement surveys, measuring people's well-being at work, measuring people's engagement, and reading comments like, "Every day before work, I sit in my car crying." That's data. And I've heard the conversation amazingly turn to, well, we need to understand this data more. What type of crying is this person talking about? How long are they crying for? At what intensity are they crying? Do we even know whether the crying is related to work or something outside of work? We need more reports on crying. Can you believe it? Sometimes what we need to understand our circumstances and our situations is clear and obvious if we will just look and listen, observe and lean in to understand. Now, of course, graphs and analytics, percentages, numbers, they have their place and they are valuable ways for us to understand how things are going. But sometimes when somebody's crying regularly before you, you don't need a report to tell you that you need to respond and take action and lean in to make a difference. When you experience nearly 100% turnover in one of your teams, you don't need a report to let you know that there's something off going on in the culture there. What are you observing in your role right now? What are the things that you know through your gut and through your observation and through what you're seeing and hearing from others that makes you worry about the state of the culture, that makes you wonder what you can do to change things, to make things better? I'm hosting coaching conversations while walking outdoors these days, and I'd love to invite you to come and join me for a coaching or a mentoring conversation here in the great outdoors. I'm only 40 minutes out of Melbourne CBD, or if that's inconvenient for you, we can meet near you at a park, around your neighbourhood, maybe a walk around the block of where you work, before work, lunchtime, after work. I'd love to understand what symptoms you're seeing play out in front of you and explore some options and provide some advice about what actions you can take that'll make a difference to people. Have a great day.